Wholesalers, it's Rob Shore at Wholesaler Masterminds, and you may be thinking to yourself, Rob, you're thinking, what do you have besides this amazing podcast? And I'm so glad you asked. Wholesaler Masterminds has an assortment of product and services all designed around the art, science, and lifestyle of wholesaling. As an example, we have coaching services designed to help you power wash your practice, whether you have 2 years or 22 years. We'll offer you speaking live engagements at divisional or national sales meetings. Our scheduling service has dedicated professionals trained in the art of getting you more appointments, Wholesaler Mastermind schedulers. Our Speakers Bureau brings you amazing speakers and processes to get better return on investment out of those speakers. And finally, our partnership, our newest partnership with Allego. If you have Allego and want to get the Wholesaler Masterminds channel on your Allego platform, please let us know. Wholesaler Masterminds, happy to bring you this podcast and so much more. Wholesaler Masterminds, the art, science, and lifestyle of wholesaling. I have a story to share with you that I'm not particularly proud of. It goes back, must be 15 years ago. And I'm feeling reasonably overwhelmed by the job responsibilities that I have. I feel I was, doing them okay, but there was just so much to do. I remember my boss called me up one day and he asked me if I would provide him with this assessment that his boss needed. And it was kind of an overview of what was happening, status update of what was happening. And I remember just kind of snapping, just saying, I can't do this. I'm full up. I can't take any more of this. And I just remember that vividly. Again, I'm not terribly proud of it, but I remember it vividly, and he was a good boss. And took it in stride and helped me work through what the problem was. Maybe the problem was I was ineffective, but more likely, we hope, the problem was that I had a capacity issue. And that's what we want to talk to our guest expert about today. Welcome to the only podcast on the planet dedicated to exploring the art, science, and lifestyle of wholesalers and their leaders. This is the new Wholesaler Masterminds radio show. I'm your host, the founder of Wholesaler Masterminds, Rob Shore. Wholesalers, welcome back to the new Wholesaler Masterminds radio show. Today I've got Matt Johnson with me. Matt helps organizations and individuals boost performance, achieve more with less, and drive engagement using his proven science-based method. He has a singular mission of optimizing people so they can fulfill their true purpose. And through his experience working in and working with different organizations, Matt realized a huge void that people were having that prevented them from their true success. People were limiting their capacity. As the president of On Target Living, Matt understands the unique demands placed on leaders and teams in today's stressful marketplace. Matt Johnson, welcome to the new Wholesaler Masterminds radio show.
I'm excited. Thanks for having me.
It's delightful to have you here, sir. So as the opening salvo, the question is, everybody feels like they're doing more with less, but you say that people are actually doing less with more. Why is that?
Well, first let's think about it. We have a cell phone or a technology on our hip that can pretty much do what a supercomputer could do 5-10 years ago. And so we have all these bells and whistles and technology and ease of use that we're creating these softwares, but at the end of the day, we're still not getting the productivity that we want and desire and possibly could have. And so we have to back up and say, why are we not reaching our true potential? Why are we not feeling like we're getting as much done as we really should? And so it's not always about at work. It's maybe I come home from work and I just don't have anything left in the tank. And that's what I'm really passionate about, is helping people expand their capacity for doing more, for having more. Everyone wants to have more. And then the last thing is to give more. If you can have those three things, usually you better watch out.
Let me dive into what might be a stupid question. What is capacity? I know what it means for me, but what does it mean to you? What does it mean to On Target? What does it mean?
Yeah, it's your container. So I make the reference, you got a glass and you got to fill the glass up. And right now the glass is full for a lot of folks. They're at capacity. There's no more room left in their container. And so how do you up level the container? How do you expand the container? And what if you looked at that as a strategy for yourself as a producer, as a salesperson, as a business leader, and really looked at the big picture and said, okay, what if I went from a 15-ounce cup to a 10-gallon bucket? What could be done? How would I feel? Would I be able to have more energy? Would I be able to focus? And would I have more balance in my life? And we can talk about balance. I really think most people are looking for balance from a 50-50. And we all know if we're trying to be our best, at some point you got to get out of balance. You got to get uncomfortable. But the art is finding the way to come back so that you're not always out of equilibrium, so things don't start to go in the opposite direction.
I want to poke around on this notion of capacity for a second, because the way that I heard you frame it, maybe it's just the way that my mind's processing it. Part of it is just having the ability to do more, but I know your message of your firm is not just to do more, it's to do all the things you do much more competently and better. So I know it's a really fine point that I'm chipping around on here, but maybe it's not just doing more. It's just figuring out how to process all the crap that I have and do it all more effectively and efficiently. Is that a fair way to look at it?
Yeah, it's all about quality. So you talk about the difference between performance and productivity, and they're drastically different. Productivity is all about quality. It's all about if I'm going to produce a crop, it's all about the quality of that production. It doesn't really matter if I have 1,000 ears of corn if they're not high quality. So yeah, there is a fine line. Everyone wants to do more. And my main message is, how do we do more with more? Because at the end of the day, if you really break it down, we have more resources, we have more tools, we have more gadgets. And the overwhelm comes as there's so much distraction. There's so many things to do. And when you break it down and say, okay, how do I create more focus in my day? That starts to lead to this quality that you're talking about. So yeah, doing more isn't necessarily about numbers, quantity. It's more about getting what really matters done in a way that's more efficient for you.
So in the example that you gave, you talked about a 15-ounce cup versus, I forget what the other measuring stick was, but a bigger cup, and that was the
10-gallon bucket.
Yeah, that was the metaphor for capacity. But what are we really using to measure capacity? I mean, I know there's three things that you drive home on. What are the three things that we're supposed to be looking at when we think about what is our capacity and how do we improve upon that capacity?
So I've worked in many different industries and we've been in the financial services industry for a long time, helping performers perform better. And one of the challenges and roadblocks we kept falling into is, health is a soft, feel-good thing, or work-life balance is a soft thing that we'll get to eventually. But at the end of the day, what we're trying to do in every industry that I've come across is trying to get your people to produce and perform better. And so, what I find that I had to break it down a lot further. What do people really want? Yeah, everyone wants health, but is that connecting the dots enough for someone in their business? So I really broke down what are the three capacity pillars, performance pillars. There's three things that I believe everybody's searching for every single day. They're looking for more focus. If you can have more focus, and when you have focus, you just are on fire. And focus is what directs performance. If you don't have it, it's really hard to know where you're going to go. Number two is energy.
Well, wait. I want to dive deeper on these, because I don't want you to just skim across the surface, because this is super important stuff.
Yeah.
I want to talk about this focus thing for a minute. So, and I say it so lightly, the focus thing. It's super important, and it goes back to what you spoke about at the very beginning, which is the notion of how much stuff is coming at us every day by virtue of the expansion of the media, by virtue of the number of outlets that we have access to, by the number of distractions that present themselves via the devices that we carry. How do you even begin to improve upon focus?
Wow, that's a deep question, but let me give you a couple of stats since you're asking about the distractions. We check or touch our phone 2,500 times a day. That's for a moderate average user.
2,500?
2,500. So whether you're swiping or pushing or touching or looking, or you're touching your phone 2,500 times a day. And a high user, most of us are creeping towards 4,000, 5,000 times a day. The attention span's gone from 12 seconds to 8 seconds. And we know that the bombardment of media and all the noise and chaos and all the things that we're getting thrown our direction, not to mention the demands, creates this distracted mind. And so when you break down focus, what is focus to me? It's really having the ability to concentrate and have the awareness and attention on the things that actually matter. For example, we probably waste our time checking whether it be an email or some type of text or social media. We probably waste several hours a day doing things that really don't matter to us. And so the ability to have focus, how do you start there? You really have to have the training, the practice. And that's what we're missing in our society. Every single person listening to this podcast right now has gone through some type of training on leadership, sales, management, business, but probably a small fraction have ever had any type of training on how to focus or pay attention.
Well, let's help.
And a little bit of my background, just to let everyone know where I came from.
Yeah.
You know, I was a collegiate golfer, very elite amateur golfer, but I struggled to get into school, pay attention in school. I had ADHD. And so I have a really track record of figuring out how to focus and have attention when I was told that, hey, you just can't do it. And I think that's the mentality we all have, is that we all have ADHD. No, what we have is we're getting really good at not being able to pay attention.
I want to stay on this for just a second, if we could, because you just said something that was super important. We train wholesalers in product. We train wholesalers in practice management. We train them in how to build better relationships. The list goes on in things that my firm participates in training wholesalers in. And we spend precious little time on this notion of focus, though we mention it some, not nearly to the degree that it deserves. So you say that people don't get trained on how to focus. Well, let's take a minute. Give me a couple of things that I can do as a highly compensated, high pressure sales professional that's going to help me address focus. Give me a nugget. Give me something I can hang my hat on.
Sure. So let's just talk about practice of something that everyone's aware of. It's your device. So if you're just constantly looking at your device anytime it dings or clicks or swipes, you're training the mind to be distracted. So the first fundamental of focus is really practicing deliberate focus. So whether that's 9 seconds or 10 seconds of really focused effort on some task, you're training the mind in a different way versus just kind of going through the motions, whatever comes your way. So for me, when I'm working with folks, I'm really talking about the first part of their day. And we all can talk about buffering and all that stuff, but what if you just spent the first part of your day focusing on like the most critical piece of your business, put everything else away, clear the noise, clear the distraction. That's like a step one first nugget. Number two is you got to start understanding the mind. And so this powerful engine that we have called the mind is very untapped. It's unresourced, or it's unresearched in the sense of how do you use it in its best ability. If you don't have the ability to quiet the mind, whether that's got a lot of things running through your head from work standpoint, personal life, then it's always going to be distracted. So you have to practice things. We can talk about meditation or breath awareness, and we can go much deeper in the tactics. But to me, it really, how do you clear the noise? It's like noise canceling headphones. How do you implement that into your workday? How do you avoid some of the distractions that are very avoidable? And sometimes there's not ways to avoid distractions you have, but if you can really look at the areas that really are low-hanging fruits that don't really matter, that could free up a lot of your attention. And there's a great quote by Steve Jobs, and his thing is, most people think focus is about saying yes to all the great ideas. Focus is about saying no to all those good ideas and focusing on the ones that actually matter. So, and I think that's where our culture is we think everything's an opportunity. In reality, we can really only focus on one thing at a time. That's going to be our best bet for high quality work.
I'm smiling because you gave a Steve Jobs quote. I remember a quote that I was offered one time. I had a guy from an ad agency in my car. He was traveling with me. And at the time he had a pager, right? It was the era of pagers, and his pager kept going off. And I'm like, dude, aren't you even going to answer that? And he looked at me and he goes, Rob, everything is urgent. Therefore nothing is urgent.
Correct.
But wholesalers, I want to just relate back a piece of what we're talking about here, because, one of the questions that we get all the time is how to improve office days. Office days suck. I get in the office at 7 o'clock, and by the time 6 o'clock p.m. rolls around, I know I've been in my office for the better part of 11 hours, but I can't tell you exactly what I did because the day just got away from me. And this one little piece about what Matt is talking about, this one little piece about focus, this one little piece about shutting off the dings and the pop-ups and the popovers and the buzzes and the vibrations is a very powerful piece. Not the answer, but a nugget to help you have a more productive day period, but not the least of which is an office day. So I just want to tie that together directly to what our universe of folks, our listeners, are doing, Matt.
Yeah, and just to expand on a couple other nuggets that I think the listeners are looking for, breath awareness is tough to train or talk about much on an audio, but what breath awareness is having the present moment feeling of the body. And so the only way to do that is to control the breathing. And we know as we become scattered and distracted and stressed, we're chest breathers. It's very fast, it's rapid, it's shallow, it doesn't get oxygen, much more inefficient with the body. And if we can become diaphragmatic belly breathers using that breath awareness, it's our most instant impact thing that we can do to clear the mind, to calm the body, to reduce stress, reduce blood pressure. But because it's free and not the sexiest thing, I think people neglect those basic foundations. And that's what our message is about. If you really can go at the foundation, like if you look at a hierarchy, the number one hierarchy for taking care of your health is breathing. You can only last minutes without breathing. And so that's where we really start, is when you can think about breathing. And I was watching American Sniper, and he's talking about his breath while trying to hit the target. Same thing you're trying to do. You're trying to hit the target every day in your business, and you got to make sure you know how to breathe properly when that happens.
Let's talk about the second pillar, this pillar of energy. So give us some ideas about, when I think energy, I think about, is my body fueled properly to allow me to do what I'm supposed to do and go the distance in the day, whatever that day is supposed to be, if it's 18 hours or whatever it is. But what are you speaking about in terms of energy?
Yeah, energy is so elusive. And I tell you, it's elusive because it's hard to track. And so I'm a guy that wants to have metrics in my business. And when I coach and when I'm working with people, I want them to track things. But how do you track energy in a really systematic way? And it's not possible. It's really on a scale of 1 to 10. You're saying, well, my energy is an 8 or my energy is a 7 or wherever it is. And I think that's where we have a challenge. People don't really know their true energy potential. What I mean by that is they're walking around thinking, well, this must be as good as it's going to get. In reality, what I found is most people, once they start really diving into this, they say things like, I never could imagine that I had this much more energy. And so I think one of the challenges is we manufacture energy in our society, whether that's stimulation like coffee or pop or soda or some type of over-the-counter or quick fix, some type of motivational quote or some carrot dangling as an incentive. That's how we really manufacture our energy. And that's a vicious cycle because you're going to just keep having to manufacture. And to me, energy is the most precious commodity that we have. I think a lot of people believe time's their most precious commodity. But in my opinion, and all the people I've worked with at a high level, if you don't have energy over your time, what is the time worth? Is it as valuable? Mm-hmm. And nobody wants time if their energy isn't where they want it to be. And energy is the fuel. I mean, if you're trying to hit some numbers or accomplish some goals or have that ability to be with your family, you need energy. And so what I found is we're not protecting, we're not building, and we're not renewing our energy like we should or could.
So in the spirit of that, let's just give the listeners, before we go on to the third pillar, let's give the listeners one of your A-list ideas about how to either replenish energy during the day or start out the day with better energy. How do I begin to fill that well?
Yeah, I mean, where does energy come from? It's really simple. It comes from food. If you really say, okay, where does energy for the human body come from? It comes from food. You protect it with sleep and rest. We can go down that path, but start with food. And I don't care who the person is. Everyone wants to be their best. And I kind of use the analogy of a machine or a high-performance racehorse. If you got a Ferrari, if you got a $10 million thoroughbred racehorse, you wouldn't feed it crap in the morning. You wouldn't give it a honey bun and a coffee and a pop and a sugary snack and then go another 8 hours before you eat and expect it to perform or run at high octane fuel. Or a Ferrari, you wouldn't give it bad gasoline. And so I start with food. And I tell people it really starts with the first 15%. What are you doing in the morning? Are you having a really high quality, easy, nutritious breakfast that you can really do every single day? You can sustain it to start you off on fire. And that could be like drinking water. We have a recipe called oatmeal on the run where you don't even cook it. You just make it overnight. It takes 5 seconds. You grab it in the morning. It's ready to go. Really thinking about it, preparing for the next day, because there's a lot expected out of everyone listening to this call and everyone I come across. And this is a huge strategy to start to build your energy, because energy comes from food. And as we know, there's a lot of unhealthy food that's going to give us really poor quality energy.
Well, I'll take you one step further, Matt. I mean, I know with 100% certainty that you have a population of listeners here that there's a percentage of them, maybe even a high percentage of them, that don't even freaking eat.
Correct.
So
Correct. They grab a coffee and they don't eat until their lunch meeting, and that's a vicious cycle. And you can tolerate that at a young age, and that's one of my messages. I mean, at 31 years old, a lot of people say, Matt, what do you know about aging? I don't know much about it from an experience standpoint, but I know a heck of a lot about it from a scientific, from a studying standpoint. And you can only sustain that lifestyle for so long. And that's our business has expanded, because these people, these top performers, these top producing folks, they start to hit this wall. And so I think what everyone listening wants to know is, how do I do this not only to my best ability, but a way that I can sustain it forever? And that's where we want to start investing in ourselves. And the number one investment we can do is in our health. That begins with eating breakfast.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about the third pillar of drive. Frame that up for us, please.
Yeah. Drive's so fascinating to me. This is the motivation and internal drive. Daniel Pink wrote the book Drive, and I think it's a fantastic book. But the way that I use to explain it is, everyone's after this external motivation. It's like, how do I get my people motivated? How do I motivate myself with some other external factor, whether that money or materials or whatever the case may be? But at the end of the day, internal drive's what works. Internal motivation is what really everyone's after, because that's sustainable, and that's something that once you have it, you'll never let it go. I think about it a different way. Instead of saying, how do I get people to have drive, I say drive is a byproduct of when you get people to have focus and energy. When your people, or when you have this focus, like this true direction of where you want to go, what you need to accomplish, and you can just stay on target, then you move into having this energy. You start to accomplish the things. You start to move the dial. You start to get the results you want. It starts to, you find that internal drive, what motivates you, what you're passionate about, just naturally. And I think when people don't have focus, when they don't have energy, there's no chance that they're going to have the internal drive. They're going to have to rely on some type of external factor. And so for me, the three culprits, or the three kind of big pieces of success, are those focus, energy, and drive. And the last one is what propels us to succeed, propels us to get through the chaos and the muck. I'm so passionate, so driven about what I do, but it doesn't mean it's not challenging. And everyone listening has challenges, but when you can tap into that internal drive, you're a beast. You're an animal to get through some of the chaos.
So just to tie it all together, because we've talked about so much, and I appreciate that. The starting platform for all of this was the capacity, and the notion that if I'm able to improve upon my focus, if I'm able to improve upon my energy, one of the outcomes, as you described it, will be you'll never have to worry about your drive. The proper focus, the proper energy, and the byproduct of drive will, when added all together, when the equation comes together, you will find yourself with greater capacity. Am I putting all that in the right order?
If you have the focus, if you start to create the ability to have the concentration, the focus, and you start to add the energy, that unmanufactured energy, that natural resource that you have, you'll find what really drives you, what you're passionate about, what gets you fired up. And that might be what you're doing, that might not be what you're doing, but those things lead to it. The bottom line, or the foundation of all this that drives capacity up, is how you rest how you eat, how you move. And those 3 pillars lead to these 3 performance outcomes, and together that starts to expand everyone's container. And so I talk about technology is exponentially growing at its capacity. Every two times a year, our phone gets better. It's smaller. It has more room. It has more gadgets. But the human element is really not catching up. And so that's what capacity is all about, is how do we go back to the basics so that we can use these tools, these resources, this knowledge that we have at a much higher level.
Wholesalers, I know, I don't even have to ask. I know that what Matt spoke about is helpful to you. I hope that you will take some time to reflect upon it, maybe even listen to the broadcast again to better understand what you can do in the area of focus, in the area of energy, in the area of drive to increase your capacity. Matt Johnson, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks, guys.
Wholesalers, come back next time for another episode of the new Wholesaler Masterminds radio show. You'll find all of our content at wholesalermasterminds.com, and the podcast can be found at iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play.